wonderful conference so far. I've been so impressed with the presentations. My name is Rebecca Hersman. I am the director of the Project on Nuclear Issues at CSIS in Washington. And we are so excited to be here with our friends, colleagues, and partners with UK PONI and we're always so impressed. We always sort of then want to recruit your presenters to come participate in our events and conferences. And so I'm just thrilled to be here and to give great kudos to Christina and the team for a terrific event. Now, I do think it's somewhat ironic that we are coming here to the UK to debate the US Modernization program. So I find that interesting. You must be deflecting your own politics and choosing to focus on our own. What we'll do is carry on with that discussion. I do believe I have a few announcements I am supposed to make, which is that speeches and prepared remarks are on the record and are attributable to the individuals present. But as we get to the questions and answers, which includes mine of them, that will be off the record. So please keep that in mind. We've asked both speakers to stick very tightly to a 10-minute limit, so we have time for some exchange and back and forth. I'll ask you, when you make a question, to please state your affiliation and your name, and to make a brief and succinct question so we can get in as many conversations as possible. So I think that will be terrific. What I'll do, because we really are kind of having a discussion here, basically a mini debate, I will try to encourage a bit more crosstalk between our presenters after their formal remarks. I'll ask a few questions and see if we can tease out some of the key issues that remain, and then we'll continue that as we broaden the conversation. You have complete bios in your folders, so I will be very brief in my introduction and maximize the time for our conversation together. Our first presenter will be Christina Krawec? Krawec, excellent. And she is at King's College of London as a graduate student in the Nonproliferation and International Security Master's Program. And she will be speaking to concerns or the need for reductions in our overall modernization program. The second speaker will be Michaela, and she specializes in missile defense, nuclear weapons modernization, and arms control as a senior policy analyst at the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. So she will argue, in fact, we probably need, I'm guessing, strongly in favor of modernization and perhaps a little more. So that should tee up two sides of the conversation, and my job will be to torture both of them. So with that in mind, Christina, I am going to offer the floor to you, as well as my timer. Hit the start button as you appear at the podium.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me here today, and thank you to PONI and all the organizers for putting this great event together. As we sit here stewing in our jealousy over the winning team's Maltesers, we will move the discussion over to nuclear modernization. And I'll start off with stating my bottom line. And my bottom line argument is that although costly, nuclear modernization is necessary. And this being said, prioritizations need to be made. The land-based leg of the triad is the least important, and ICBM modernization can be put on hold. Long-range standoff missiles and nuclear-capable submarines, on the other hand, should be the top priority, and there are ways to cut some of these rather daunting costs. So in order to maximize our time here, I'm going to start off by giving a brief overview of the US Modernization program. Then I'll go into why modernization is necessary, and finally end on my recommendations for how we should be best providing a framework for prioritizing our modernization plans. So to start off, in 2016, President Obama approved a plan to modernize the United States nuclear arsenal. The overall modernization effort devotes funding for developing the nuclear warheads themselves, improving delivery systems, command and control capabilities, and planning nuclear facilities. But for the purposes of this presentation, I'm only going to be focusing on the delivery systems. Or in other words, this is the nuclear triad. And the nuclear triad is made of 3 categories of nuclear delivery system, all of which have different plans regarding modernization. So the easiest way to frame the issue of modernization is to use two different sides of the argument. One of the largest concerns regarding modernization is the cost. With a price tag at $400 billion over the next 10 years, that's no small sum. And it's a massive concern, so it's very easy for the media to throw out terms like $1 trillion over the next 30 years. But proponents of modernization, on the other hand, cite international strain with other nuclear powers, such as Russia, China, and North Korea, as main reasons why the U.S. needs to maintain its own fleet of functioning nuclear-capable delivery systems. So now I'm going to go into 3 reasons why modernization is necessary. And first of all, we've been talking about it all day, is deterrence. The point of deterrence is to stop a nuclear attack against the US by ensuring that proper retaliation would occur in the event of a conflict. And the modernization of nuclear forces to benefit deterrence is supported by US leaders on both sides of the political spectrum, although with varying levels of eloquence. And as long as other countries have nuclear capabilities, the US will have an interest in nuclear capabilities as well. It will continue to hone its own capabilities to provide an adequate deterrent. And in fact, before the modernization plan was enacted, the US had not built new nuclear delivery systems for a quarter of a century. And despite this, in the meantime, both Russia and North Korea have worked on developing their own capabilities. Secondly, I want to talk about the deteriorating technology that is prevalent throughout the United States delivery systems. Every single aspect of the nuclear triad is out of date. For example, with the B-52 bombers, by the 2040s, when these aircraft will be retired, many will have served upward of 70 years. And the the Alcom is also aging. The tech was built in 1982 with an expected service life of 10 years. And finally, first used in 1981, the Ohio-class nuclear-capable submarines can serve up to 42 years and will all use the end of their serviceable lives by 2040. And as you can see, just with this diagram, these are the aspects of the triad that are rapidly deteriorating and those of which we are considering updates or replacements. Finally, we need modernization because of the strategic capabilities that the 3 legs of the nuclear triad provide. For example, after sending them out, in terms of the air-based capabilities, bombers can be called back should minds of decision makers be changed. For the land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, they are dispersed across the country in protected silos and have an overall lower cost than other delivery options. And for the sea-based leg of the nuclear triad, submarines have an invulnerability at sea. They are mobile and elusive, which makes them hard to hit by adversaries. And their invulnerability means that there's more confidence in their retaliatory capabilities. Finally, I'm going to talk about recommendations for how to proceed with the modernization program. It is a very costly endeavor, and billions of dollars are going to be poured into it. So I'm suggesting that ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, and the land-based leg of the nuclear triad should be placed at the bottom of the priority list. They are the least important leg of the nuclear triad because they cannot be forward deployed, so their ability for deterrence is diminished, especially when it comes to reassuring allies, which is a strong point of contention right now. As an American living in Europe, I can see that the credibility of the US is certainly under challenge. And so because of these drawbacks, plans to modernize the ICBMs and replace them with the ground-based strategic deterrent, or a GBSD, should be put on hold while the air and sea-based legs of the triad are modernized. It's likely that the maintenance costs are going to rise, but placing more efforts in the other 2 legs of the triad will allow the US to take a step back and look at the land-based leg with a fresh view and decide whether and how to modernize properly. Secondly, I suggest that we reduce the number of planned Columbia-class submarines from 12 to 10. Right now, there are 14 active Ohio-class submarines in active duty. And with the current plan for modernization of the sea-based leg of the triad, there will be a period of 10 years in which 10 submarines will be used in active waters and will be in active commissioning. So with the schedule of decommissioning the Ohio-class submarines and recommissioning the Columbia-class, or commissioning the Columbia-class submarines, there will be this period of 10 years or so, which is predicted to only use these 10 submarines for active duty, which is an admission on the part of the Navy that maybe 10 submarines is all we need for an active and capable deterrent. Finally, I'd like to make LRSOs a main priority. Their benefits include they can increase the number of targets that can be hit. They're an excellent forward deployment capability, so the U.S. can deploy them for symbolic purposes and escalate and de-escalate tension as needed, and they maintain a credible deterrence and assurance to allies. So overall, to wrap up my presentation and to put together my arguments, modernization is very necessary, and even though it is costly, and in the end, we need to make sure that we are putting our priorities in the right place in order to have the most effective deterrent at the lowest cost. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much to the PONI UK for having me here. It is a great honor to be here among so many friends and colleagues. Back when I started at Heritage 7 years ago, my older, more esteemed colleague looked at me and said, "What do you want to do?" And me, a little scared intern, said, I want to work on this nuclear weapons stuff." And he just kind of looked at me and said, "Why would you want to work on a steam engine?" And I think today we're well past that steam engine phase, and programs like PONI have great part in that. So thank you so much for what you do in the United States and in the UK. Nuclear weapons are the only weapons that can end the United States and the world as we know it. At the same time, their sheer destructiveness has prevented great power conflict since the dawn of the nuclear age. And the Brits, with their nuclear deterrent, have played a role in that awesome accomplishment. Our countries share a special relationship. You used US testing sites, your submarines launch US-made missiles, and I'm sure there will be a lot for us to learn as we prepare to modernize our strategic submarines. The Department of Defense launched the Nuclear Posture Review. The resultant document will guide US forces, US nuclear forces, and US nuclear planning. Being a nuclear wonk, I came up with a triad of challenges and opportunities: strategic, fiscal, and human. What I mean by strategic is the way we think about nuclear weapons. Imagine we're in 1920s, and we're trying to come up with force posture that would keep us safe throughout 1980s and maybe even 2000s. In 1920s, we didn't know about stealth, we didn't know about radars, and we didn't know about the internet, among many other things. Now, our platforms that we are developing will be in service for decades to come. Decades during which their operating environment can drastically change. And I think the past 3 decades taught us just how fast and unexpected that change can be. So, for example, we had great hopes that Russia would become a productive member of the international system. And even as late as 2010, we thought that the potential for conflict with Russia was low. We have China with opaque capabilities, that are improving qualitatively and quantitatively and are underpinned by very capable and active production complex. And then there are wildcards. We talked about North Korea today, but we also have India, Pakistan, maybe Iran. We have never gotten our next war right. Secretary of Defense General Mattis said, "I have never fought where I expected to in all of my years of service." And I think that's why we need a degree of flexibility, adaptability, and humility as we are preparing to tackle the next deterrence requirements. Second, the fiscal challenge. And I borrowed this neat chart from the CSIS from Todd Hersman. Our delivery systems need modernization all at the same time. The CBO estimate is $400 billion over the next 10 years, and many more billion after that. It will be very difficult to pull off nuclear modernization program if defense budget caps remain in place, and maybe even if they go away. But it is something that we need to prioritize. At the same time, we have many conventional systems that are reaching end of their service life roughly around the same time. Munitions, fighters, ships. They will create more competition for scarce resources. Why is nuclear weapons modernization just so difficult? It is not because it is inherently unaffordable. It's because we have not prioritized it in the federal budget. And I think it is a testament to the uniqueness of nuclear warheads that we can come to Congress year after year and say, "Give me billions of dollars to maintain this capability, but not improve it and not give you any new capability." That would not work with any other weapon system. Third, the human element of the nuclear weapons modernization. Even the best, the most properly funded nuclear modernization plan will fall short if we do not have the right skills to address future challenges. That is why we should devote as much thought to what kind of skills we need as we do to what kind of platforms we need. And again, this is where programs like PONI are just so valuable in giving us tools and helping us to understand better what the future challenges will be. I think there are policy steps that the administration can take to address and revitalize the human element of the modernization strategy. For example, I think the administration should do away with the 3 no's policy. No new weapons, no new warheads, no new missions and capabilities for the existing warheads. That policy was predicated upon believing that the relationship with Russia will be much better than what it is today. Secondly, I think the administration should open the possibility to think about nuclear weapon testing. Now, I am not saying that we need to have a large-scale nuclear weapons test tomorrow, but I do think that we should give ourselves intellectual freedom to think through options how to best take care of the stockpile for decades ahead. And thirdly, I think we should not discount the option that we will have to develop new nuclear warheads in decades to come. I do think that these 3 steps would give us more flexibility and adaptability, and those are both very critical attributes for uncertain times. Now, forging the common vision for the need for nuclear weapons modernization will be the Trump administration's greatest challenge, regardless of the policy conclusions of the NPR. But I think if done right, it will be also its greatest opportunity. So thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Terrific. Well, we definitely have kind of staked out some territory on the two polls. And so what I'd like to do is just have a little bit of discussion up here at the table about some of the pros and cons of your respective proposals. And I would say my suggestion would be to think of this, the way I generally think about the modernization program is something like a Jenga game. How many people here know what a Jenga game is? You know what it is? Right? So it's the